Well, good afternoon, guys. I am back on the Kaena Point trail to talk about the plants here again. Not because I think I missed anything, but because I didn't like the video so much. I'm going to make a much better video now with my better filming techniques, my better knowledge of the plants. So let's just jump right in and see what kind of cool plants we can find. Now, most of the plants we're going to find at the point, or at least on this trail, are going to be non-native, but we have a couple of native ones here. See this vine growing all over the ground here is Jacquemontia ovalifolium. It's a member of the family Convolvulaceae. I believe the indigenous Hawaiian variety is endemic, so it's like an endemic subspecies, but the species itself is not endemic to the Hawaiian Islands. It's a very bit of a woody vine right here, but it just grows over the ground. Fortunately, I don't think it's the right season for it to be in bloom, but it just produces a very typical Convolvulaceae flower. And we have this plant as well. This is Myoporum sandwicense, commonly known as Naio. This is a plant found in the lowlands and dry forests of the Hawaiian Islands up to about like 7,000 feet in elevation. So it can be found quite high up, like on the big island on Maui. So its flower looks like. It is almost endemic to the Hawaiian Islands, but it's also found on the island of Mangaia, so it can technically only be considered indigenous. Mangaia is an island in the Southern Cook Islands, about I think 2,000 to 4,000 miles away. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's a ways away though, so it most likely had to get there by distribution from birds from the Hawaiian Islands where it most likely evolved. So yeah, interesting story dispersal. There's a few genera and other species that are almost completely endemic to the Hawaiian Islands, save for one species which is found outside, sometimes on just one other island in the South Pacific. Now, as I said, there are quite a lot of invasive species at Kaena Point. We have a great example of one right in front of us. This is Pluchea indica. It's a plant native to the coastlines of Southeast Asia and India. It was, of course, inadvertently introduced here, and now it's gotten pretty out of control on the coastlines. There is a native species of Pluchea, not to Hawaii, but to the American Southwest, which is my other specialty for flora. It's a Pluchea sericea, and it actually grows in some pretty harsh environments, like into the on the bottom of Death Valley. It's a pretty hardy species, but it's a lot more interesting than this one, in my opinion. I don't know much about invasives, so I haven't learned too much about this aside from the fact that it's a member of the family Asteraceae. So it's a little interesting, a tough, salt prune hardy member of Asteraceae. And this here, this big thing, is most likely a species in the genus Vachellia. You can tell it's Vachellia because it has stipular spines, which you can see very well on here. So at the base of those spines would have been leaves at one point in time. Here you can see another good example of the Pluchea indica right in front of us. Here, I might be able to get a good view of the actual flowers it has. There we go. Okay. So these should very clearly be asteraceous flowers, or inflorescences, or capitulums, whatever you want to call it. Get as technical as you want here. I still want to commonly call the caulic flowers, as they're commonly called, the inflorescences. Survival on the coast, there's a few things plants need to be able to do, and the most important one is be able to withstand the wind. Coastlines all over the world are almost always going to be windy, at least some of the time. So it's an ever-present thing that's going to shape the plants here, and they have to be a little bit resistant to if they want to survive. And in fact, they have to be resistant to a very salty, salt spray kind of wind, because of course you're right by the ocean. And here in particular, prevailing wind comes from around that way, sort of down to the coast, but still it blows salty water all the way into here easily. So any plant that wants to grow here has to be able to deal with that. It has to deal with getting salt on it. It has to deal with growing in soil that's a little bit salty. It's a tough place to grow, but any plant that adapts to grow here will have a very open set of niches it can occupy and fill. I mean, some plants have it by just getting pruned, like the two plants here. Some just grow really low and basically avoid the wind altogether, while they'll still be exposed to the salt spray. It's a really tough place to live, but again, any plant that evolves here has a lot of niches it can take advantage of. And clearly it's not too impossible to grow, as similar habitats are. You can find trees out here, you can find shrubs, you can find herbs. All kinds of life can grow out here. Now here's a great spot. You can see some of the work that's underway to restore the environment here. This silvery plant, Sesbania tomentosa, commonly called ojai, has all been planted here. So any silvery one you see has been planted, like down there, and further in the background there between the larger green Sandalwood toccata. I'll talk more about both of these later, but the plant was very heavily wiped out by grazing cattle, I believe. Nothing particular. It's not super susceptible to other invasives. It can compete just fine against them, but the amount of grazing that happened on the islands in the early 1900s really devastated the plant a lot. And but thankfully it's starting to be replanted now, and hopefully it can actually leave the endangered species list. It's cool endemic to Hawaii. I'll talk about it more later, as I said. Speaking of saleable zacata, commonly called beach nampaka, this is a good time that I need to talk about it. It's a member of the family Goodeniaceae, and it is probably the most abundant native plant in the coastal areas in Hawaiian Islands. It has absolutely no threats to it at all, and it grows very well, and it's commonly used in cultivation by hotels along beachfronts, so it's really got nothing to worry about, and it's a really great native plant. Found all throughout the South Pacific, and I think even in the Indian Ocean and coastal areas as well. It has these interesting white berries, and it produces really cool half flowers, which unfortunately I think we're past the right season to be seeing them in bloom. They look really cool, and it's a very very big characteristic of the family Goodeniaceae, which interestingly is very closely related to the family Asteraceae, one of the most popular and of course one of the largest plant families in the whole world. They sort of split off from each other when Australia and southern South America split apart from Antarctica. So Asteraceae evolved in southern South America, while Goodeniaceae's descendants evolved in Australia, where the family currently has most of its species. There's also a radiation of endemic Salevola species that live primarily in the mountain rainforest. Include species such as Salevola gaudachaudiana or Salevola gaudachaudia, and I think about 10 others that look quite a lot different from this one, but Boscaevola, I should say, is a pretty large genus, all things considered. Another good indigenous plant we have right here is Sida Fallax. I don't know the common Hawaiian name, but this is a member of the Milo family, Malvaceae. Oh, I was thinking it was not going to be in bloom at all, but we can see a couple of flowers right here. It may not be open enough to really see the Malvaceae characteristic, but that's what it looks like. It's a very woody vine that's just shrub, kind of prostrate plant that grows along the ground like this, and does a good job at holding the soil together. Speaking of which, that's another great thing about beach nampaka, is the fact that it can grow shoots through the sand if it gets buried again, so it really helps bind the soil together. Not all the plants out here do this, but that's a really good adaptation to do in life to have, and very important for preventing erosion in these really hostile environments. There you go, that's a real moneymaker shot of the flower bear. You can probably see why it's a member of the family Malvaceae if you know the main characteristic of it, which is that, well, at least most subfamilies of it have a series of fused stamens surrounding the central pistil. They're not actually fused to the pistil itself, but they surround it, and a sort of tube. It's a very unusual feature, but it clearly must work because there's a lot of species in the family Malvaceae. You can really see the Sandalwood zacata growing pretty thickly over here. Look underneath it, it's got a very thick layer of leaf duff. This is good. In addition to trapping sand from the wind, it can trap all its leaf litter underneath, which can then decompose into a nice fertile soil and help replenish the soil here. But here's a really good thing you can see, is that they're actually starting to take conservation really seriously here. When I first visited Kaena Point over like 14 years ago, they were so young back then. They were you pretty much ride your vehicle anywhere here in either of our plants. It was not very well conserved, but they're starting to fence off areas and try and replant some stuff and have natives take over again. We're not exactly doing anything about the really invasive plants and like weeding them out yet, but hopefully they can get to that eventually. It's another good example of a Naio, which you can see it's very salt prone, but it handles it well. Typically it's grows as a tree in more inland areas, but here very clearly it has to grow as a shrub because that's the shape the wind wants it to be growing as. Here's another invasive. I talk about this one a lot. This is Leuceana leucocephala. It's a member of the Thespesia family, of course, and the same subfamily as like Acacia and Vachellia and all those other genera, with the very poofy looking flowers. Those are flowers about ready to go off. A lot of them actually lose their leaves in the summer around here. You can see them growing all along there as well. They get pretty thick out here, but I've not been seeing very many because I've been trying to get quickly to the end of the coastal hiking trail. Very invasive plant out here, and one that unfortunately does handle the harsh conditions well. Oh, here's another one that is questionably native. This is Thespesia populnea, commonly called rosewood. There's a few species that can be referred to as rosewood in the whole plant kingdom, and this one is a member of the Milo family, Malvaceae. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it in bloom, but it has some very characteristic leaves that are like cordate or heart-shaped, and rather long cordate, I would say, but cordate nonetheless. That's what its fruit look like. Again, we don't actually know if it's native or not. I of the train of thought that says it's likely not native, but many people disagree with that. Okay, here we have another native plant, or I think some people question its native status, but this is Waltheria indica. Also a member of the Milo family, though originally it had been the family Sterculiaceae, which was before it's realized that family should be merged into Malvaceae. Not sure you can see any of its flowers here, but it is kind of a cool plant, a very common sort of weedy plant in the tropical and subtropical areas. This is another good native plant actually. This is Heliotropium anomalum variety argenteum, which is actually an endemic subspecies of Heliotropium anomalum. It actually looks, I think, a bit different from regular Heliotropium anomalum subspecies, so it's kind of cool. It looks a lot like the silver sword, and I think it actually had the same name, silver sword in the Hawaiian language, like ahina hina. Of course, that's a member of the family Boraginaceae. Just seeing a fair number of native species here, which is really good. Well, I kind of knew I would as I got further along. However, good invasive species, or native species news, we have another common native grass up ahead. This one is Sporobolus virginicus. Common grass in tropical seashores around the world. It is a good native here, and it also helps bind to sand as well, because it can grow right through it once it gets buried. So it helps build up dunes and maintain them. You can see how thick and like almost woody its base can be at times. Like that's all grass, but it feels almost like wood to me. Flimsy wood, but wood nonetheless. Some other good specimens of the Heliotropium anomalum variety argenteum, because those other ones I showed you seem to be a little worse for wear. Kind of cool. They almost grow a little bit like tree or shrub, like they're like little tiny trees. I love them, and I love the fact that they're native as well. It really pleases me when cool looking plants are native. Like there's nothing more unfortunate than when you get a really cool looking plant and you find out it's not native to the area. This might sound a bit psychotic to people that do not understand invasive species, but trust me, it's they're really never very good, honestly. They're not a good thing. Cause a lot of problems typically, and yeah, I just can't respect them, honestly. I can probably respect them in their native habitat, but out here, especially when there's so many rare endangered endemic species that are being threatened by other non-natives, even if they're not that invasive, it's really hard to just respect their presence here and not think they should be just gone from the islands, honestly. I decided to take the inland road for a bit, and I thought it might have been a mistake until I saw a couple of things. Firstly, back there is some taller Naio trees, like actually growing as a tree instead of a wind-blown shrub. So probably about 13 to 15 feet tall. Actually, maybe more like 12 actually. They're not super tall, but they're definitely growing as full-on trees here instead of shrubs. They have a little more protection from the wind. And this is another Hawaiian Islands endemic. This is the Hawaiian cotton, commonly called Ma'o, Gossypium tomentosum. I made a short about this plant and accidentally called it Gossypium sandwicense. It's one of my least viewed shorts, so that really taught a lesson about making sure I know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of plants called sandwicense. Either way, I can't see any of the cotton on it right now or any of its flowers, unfortunately, but that's definitely what it is. It's another member of the family Malvaceae. It's a very nice sort of pale bluish yellow leaves. Find it very commonly growing around the shorelines in Hawaii in the low shrublands. It's to be best adapted to, and it certainly seems to hold up well against invasive species. Oh god, I'm getting flies in my ear. Okay, I gotta go. More of the Gossypium tomentosum sprawling over the rocks here, as well as these very cap-looking Myoporum sandwicensis trees. Well, the trees might be pushing it. They only seem to be about like 6 foot tall at most here, but they certainly do have the form of trees, and unlike the upper very shrubby ones on the coast. Ahead we have some non-native, which is really every agave. species of agave out there, these really tall stalks. And the fact that they're producing them right now means they must be about to die soon, because of course all agaves are monocarpic, and when they bloom, produce their very tall inflorescence. They don't last much longer after that. See a lot of the past inflorescences as well. Let's get a little closer. Wow, there's actually quite a few Naio trees here. That's really good to see. But there's a lot of agave. Another unfortunately cool looking plant that's not native, and those are some really impressive flower stalks. Those inflorescences must be maybe up to 30 feet tall. Maybe more like 25, but still, it's very tall, even for agaves, which can, there's quite a few species that can do that in the right conditions. And now that I'm almost all the way out to the point, I can talk about this plant I mentioned earlier a little more. This silvery thing is Sesbania tomentosa, commonly called ojai. It is very clearly a member of the pea family with its silvery, pinnately compound leaves. I mean, I guess not all of them have silvery leaves, but you know what I mean. And its papilionaceous flower. You have a banner petal up there, a wing petal on either side, and two fused to make the keel. Wing a little better, yeah. Very typical for the pea family. Well, of course, not all members of the pea family have flowers like that. Some have flowers that look a little more like pom-poms and feather dusters, and others are just like more like typical flowers. But most of them do have the flowers, just a banner petal, the keel, and wings. And here is the fence that was set up to keep rats out and mice and other things that might eat the eggs of native seabirds. So, you know, Leuceana albatross and the shearwaters. It's Newell's shearwater that lives out here, I can't remember. Or Newell's storm petrel. There's also some storm petrels too. There's quite a few seabirds that use this place to nest. Of a Leuceana albatross only comes seasonally. Used to be a double gate here to really make sure. Oh, of course I gotta do this. Kick it open. Whoa, that really wants to slam shut. Well, here we are. So that I'm out here, I'm able to find a few more native plant species. This vining thing in front of me, I don't know exactly what it is, but it is a member of the genus Pluchea, which may have been split up by now, but it is a native to the Hawaiian Islands, or actually this one is endemic to the Hawaiian Islands. All the members of that genus are, and I think the whole genus might be, though as I said, it may have either need to be split up or merge with some member genera. It's, last I checked, there's a bit of a taxonomic controversy around it. You can see them growing right along here. It's again a member of the sunflower family and endemic to the Hawaiian Islands. I think the common name is Nehe, but don't quote me on that. Much more of the Sporobolus virginicus as well. And really, you're just gonna find a lot less non-native plants out here, especially since they fenced it off. And they're doing some restoration work out here as well. I really missed it, or miss showing you that there's a lot of plantings out behind the fence. I think there might be some inside as well. It is very windy right now. Another endemic Hawaiian plant right you can find here, I believe is this one, which I believe is Capparis sandwichiana, the endemic Hawaiian species of caper. The flower's a bit beat up, but it definitely looks like something you'd find from a caper plant if you didn't know. It's really long stamens like that. It's got the opposite leaves. So maybe not really silvery, but looks maybe just a little bit dusty. So maybe a bit glaucous, which can help it withstand some of the conditions out here. As I'm seeing a lot of the same things I saw behind the fence, but I know there's a few other good ones you can find as I get to the point. Really nice Heliotropium anomalums out here as well. There are species of Heliotropium you can find out here that's native. No endemic variety. It's a Heliotropium curasavicum. I just didn't happen to find any on my way out this time, maybe because I took that back road. Well, I'm really glad I was able to show the Hawaiian cotton. This overall is a really good example of the Hawaiian low shrublands, especially really close to the coast, would have looked like in days long since past. Some good examples of some dunes out here, right, rolling shrublands with the Sabola ticata being the dominant species and conforming to the hillsides, and also helping to build up the dunes we can find here. I don't know for sure, but I think this grass, which looks a little invasive, might actually be native. It's potentially Heteropogon contortus, commonly called pili. a good native species with seeds that can actually dig into the soil. So if they once they fall off, they so if it's really coil on, it has a little coiled tail on them, and once it gets wet, it what it does is it like expands, and so it pushes the seed into the soil a bit, and then when it dries up again, it contracts, pulling the tail back into the soil, and then it gets wet again. It can expand and push, like almost like a drill, the seed into the soil some more. Probably can cause some problems for grazing animals, so they can dig into the fur and into the backs of like sheep and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy, but it's a really cool feature to have out here that some plants that are adapted to areas of sparse rainfall have around the world. Once again, I do not know for sure if that's what that plant is, unfortunately, but I have a sneaking suspicion that's what it is. This is winter time. You can see a lot more lace and albatross out here, and by more I mean any at all, because this is not the season you find them nesting out here. That's definitely the winter time, that was when my last video out here that I made was during February of 2023. I don't think it was such a bad video, but as I said, I figured I could know more stuff now. I can make a better video, and that's less shaky. Well, maybe not less shaky, but one that's much more informative at least. I really hope I did that today. So thanks for watching, and see you all next time whenever I come back to the Hawaiian Islands, or maybe just make a video in Utah. Hopefully you guys aren't too picky about where I'm making my videos, because that may all change for some really long times in the future. Fingers crossed, maybe not, we'll see. I got some plans I'm working on. Maybe you guys might find exciting. Well, speaking of which, I'm at 88 subscribers as I film this, and by the time I upload it, it'll likely be more. So I am really excited to be coming to 100 subscribers, and thank you guys for all your support. I don't think my channel is very great, honestly, but I still upload stuff either way, and I do believe I've improved quite a bit. Hey, look, it's a really big sandalwood. Either way, though, I do think I've improved considerably, and I do appreciate the people that always comment on my stuff and like what I do. So I know I'm not nearly as good as the crime page Botany Doesn't Guide, but maybe I offer a different niche in YouTube that you guys might still appreciate anyways. So once again, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you next time. One other native endemic plant I want to talk about is this thing right here. This is Euphorbia something or other. I don't know exactly what species it is, but Hawaii has quite a few endemic Euphorbia species that were formerly placed in the genus Camphorweed. This seems to be one no exception. If I pluck the leaves off, it would almost certainly have a milky sap. I don't want to do that because there's some that are pretty endangered out here. I don't think this is the endemic variety of the Euphorbia celestrates variety, Kaenensis, something like that. There is an endemic variety or subspecies of Euphorbia celestrates Kaena Point, but this doesn't look quite like it in my opinion. I'll put a picture up what it actually looks like. So I think this is a different species. They are commonly called Akoko in the Hawaiian language, but yeah, not for sure. So I figured I'd also show you a Vitex rotundifolia, but I think this video might be going on long enough. That plant, by the way, is just a cool member of the mint family with purple flowers that grows in coastal areas in the Hawaiian Islands, and that again can also grow through sand and help bind it together. But alas, I don't think I'm going to show you it this time, unfortunately. So thanks for watching, and see you next time for real.